Okay, welcome to another episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Dai-shihan Miller here from Warrior Concepts, and we're going to jump right into things, right? So, but you know what? First, before I forget, shout out to my friends at Bujikhan India. They gifted me this really cool T-shirt. Check this out, right? Way back in 2015 when I was visiting. I think so. Yeah, that's what it says, 2015. So anyway, thanks, guys. If you ever need anything, you know how to find me. Anyway, all right, so this is a part two, right, in a series. I started last episode on this idea of ninja manipulation tactics. We were always manipulating, but for this kind of context and format and whatnot, often I have to break these things down so that we can dive into specific ways that things are done, right? So anyway, talk about that more as we go. But what we're focusing on this time is controlling your opponent's beliefs, decisions, and sense of control before he ever realizes that he lost it, right? One of the first lessons that I learned in this art was that a ninja takes the attacker's control away from them long before the attacker ever realizes that he lost it, right? Let me just change this light here just a little bit so I don't look like I have alien eyes as it reflects off my glasses. Anyway, all right, so it's easier said than done, right? Because there's a lot that has to go into understanding what's going on, right? And we're going to cover a couple of these things today. In this format, this is not something that we can just dive into, right? So again, this is that big picture kind of thing. It's the Goodyear blimp, it's the hot air balloon, it's the helicopter up above the sports stadium. You get this big picture kind of thing, but you're not down in the nosebleed seats where you can see all the details happening, right? It's not possible, right? So anyway, take a look at several different things. Got this weird diagram going on. We'll make reference to that, but let's just jump right into things, right? You've heard me. If you follow this series, if you've been with Whiteboard Wednesday for a while, and this is way over our 100th training episode. I haven't really kept track. I'm sure if we went back and counted, we're way over 100 anyway. But so I say this a lot, right? Contest fighting, sport fighting is not survival. And that doesn't mean that these guys aren't tough guys. It doesn't mean that you don't run the risk of injury, being maimed, crippled, dying, whatever, right? But there are safety valves and safety mechanisms built in. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about here. We use social media a lot to promote the academy, right? So I just pop things out into different spaces in our local area, right? There are these different Facebook pages for different things that are going on, and those things that fit, I pop things in, right? About whether classes are going on or little tips for parents helping their kids with confidence or dealing with bullies or adults and certain things to think about and whatnot, links to these things, that kind of thing, right? But we've got this, I'm going to call him wrestler guy, right? From our area, okay? So wrestler guy, right? Every time I post one of these, he posts this big thing about how he took karate. Well, his most recent one, right, is how he took karate when he was a kid, but wrestling taught him more discipline. Wrestling's better for self-defense. And the comment he made this time was, just look at all the UFC fighters. They all wrestle. That's like a politician answering the question, what makes you qualified to run for this office? That's like that politician saying, well, I'm as qualified as the other guys that are doing it, or I'm qualified because I'm qualified. And you can't answer a question about or justify your position by pointing out another position. Wrestling's a sport. I'm not saying these guys can't defend themselves. UFC, sport fighting. I'm not saying they can't defend themselves, right? But they're not allowed to gouge people in the eyes. They're not allowed to grab them by the testicles and rip them off. They're not allowed to do a bunch of things that in a survival context, I'm absolutely going to fucking do, right? So again, right, and I get it, right? Wrestler guy prefers wrestling. I get it, right? Every time we post one of these, it's like he has this cookie cutter kind of thing that he just slaps on there, right? And to go back to the fact that he trained in karate as a kid, well, now we're trying to, as an adult, and this is a huge thing that I go into in my Kuden podcast and with my students when we're taking a look at how we process our world, right? this is a really good example of somebody who's taking something that they experienced as a child with a child's brain and experience of the world and holding on to that in the way they process the world as a grown-up. But it's not a grown-up processing the world. It's still that kid's perception processing the world. I don't care what the age of the body and the brain is. The perceptions are stuck somewhere, okay? If anybody does this with a given martial art, right? I tried that martial art and it sucked, or I tried this martial art, just saw a video yesterday. The guy tried to be unbiased and still say that he learned things from it, but he was basing his perception of ninjutsu or whatever he was doing based on his one-time experience. Yes, it was for years, but was he really talking about ninjutsu, or was he talking about the way that form of ninjutsu was being taught by that teacher, right? So ninjutsu sucks, or ninjutsu is not good for street fighting or whatever because of this box that I played in, and so I couldn't make the jump, or that teacher couldn't help me make the jump, or the format didn't compute with my you get the idea, okay? This is going to come in here really, really quickly. But anyway, so again, this is part 2 of a series that I started last episode, right? And last episode, we focused on getting an attacker to grab us, regardless of whether he wants to grab, regardless of whether he's a wrestler or grabber or whatever, right? And that's it's not easy, but once we understand what's going on, right? So again, I'll link to that episode in the description just in case you missed it. I'm talking to the folks that are over on YouTube, so you'll have to subscribe to our YouTube channel. But if you're over there anyway, you can just click on the live tab, and you'll have a running thing of all of our past Kuden episodes and all of the past Whiteboard Wednesday things. But I link to things so it makes it easier for you to just jump to that thing. Okay, so here's the question: where does this idea of advanced manipulation tactics, where does it fall in the grander scheme of training? Set aside the word advanced. Where does it fall? Okay. Again, if the word advanced is there, people are going to jump straight to, well, it must be advanced, Sensei, so it's way over here. It's not that easy. Okay. Remember what I talked about wrestler guy and his experience with karate and his preoccupation with wrestling and how he's trying to translate. Okay. So here's the thing. If we're focusing on just learning a martial art, for the sake of having a black belt in that martial art, because we like Asian stuff, whatever it is, right? You can play with it anywhere, okay? But if you're training for self-protection and survival, then it has a definite place for a reason. That being said, that doesn't mean that it's not already built into things at the lowest levels, right? There's this idea of when a teacher is teaching, if they're a good teacher, when a teacher is teaching, they're kind of boxing things as they give it to you, and they're highlighting certain things, right? Hatsumi Sensei, my teacher, used to always say that he could write an entire book on one technique. Well, I don't think that would sell very well, because most people that are focused on techniques tend to be like stamp collectors and coin collectors, right? There's never enough, okay? But there's this model, right? There's this thing that can be done, okay? So at a certain level of a student's training, the teacher may only have them like just work mechanics, work this kind of thing, work whatever. And then as they move up, they're going to highlight more in the way of dynamics and less in the way of physical step-by-step. You're still learning new techniques. There's still physical step-by-step, but now we're going to focus on dynamics. We're going to focus on principles, concepts, balance, timing, distancing, angling, those kind of things, over technique, because at a certain point, what you do doesn't matter nearly as much as how, why, when, and where. Okay. So again, we'll talk about this stuff here in a minute, right? Let me just shift through my notes here. Okay. So again, before we dive too far into this, if you're still with me, do me a favor, like, share, comment, subscribe, whatever. That way the algorithms know to make sure you get notified every week when I put out a new one of these things. And also it helps other people that are looking for this type of training, right, to find it. Okay. So, all right, that being said, Let me tell you about something that I covered last night for my inner circle guys. They get a coaching call once a week, right? So we have this group training where I can answer questions that they have for stuff that they're working on or whatever. And in lieu of any questions, I have a topic. And then each week is divided into personal development, history, that kind of stuff, strategies and tactics, skills and techniques, weapons, right? And then so there's a generalized theme, although student questions kind of circumvent the whole outline because that gets priority, right? But anyway, during last night's class, it was skills and techniques week, or it is skills and techniques week. So what I thought I'd focus on was prioritizing training, like where a student should focus. And again, if they're just trying to get a black belt in ninjutsu, a black belt in Bujinkan, taijutsu, whatever, do whatever, okay? Whatever floats your boat, do that thing, because boat floating is priority, right? I'm gonna have to make a meme out of that, boat floating. Anyway, so, but from a survival standpoint, what I started students with was not techniques. Everybody always gets techniques, right? But what I did was I went all the way back into a historical context, because we have to understand, if we're only looking at the scrolls actually start somebody at a very specific point. And if you look through the scrolls in the 9 lineages of the Bujinkan, right, there are no beginner levels. Okay, and I know people try to translate Shoden and Jodyaku no Maki, right, as beginner, but Jo and Sho, that kanji, that doesn't mean beginner. Okay? It means head of class. It points to most important. Okay, all of the most important principles and concepts of a lineage, based on what's in the Makimono, in the scrolls, are in the Densho in that first level. So if you lost the scrolls, they got stolen, they got burned up in a fire, whatever, and you knew this box, you could recreate Churyaku, Geiryaku, Chuden, Okuden, whatever. You could reproduce those things because you had the most important stuff. That's also why the number of kata dwindle as they go up. It's like a pyramid, okay? But it's actually an inverted funnel. You come in up here and you learn this stuff, and then you go deeper. It's a key word that's used in Isuku Sensei's dojo all the time. Anyway, so what I started everybody with was this idea that there was only 2 ways to get into a martial lineage back in the day, whether it was ninjutsu or a family or whatever, right? You either had to be allowed in, right, at a certain point in your life without getting whacked, right? Because you're asking for them to give you secrets that keep them alive and give them an edge over other places, right? Or you grew up in the family, you grew up in the lineage, okay? So here's the question. What do the kids learn? Because kids actually started in the training based on historical references anywhere between the ages of 2 and 6, more generally between 4 and 6, okay? Could they have been handed a boken, right? Told to just copy the other guy, the adults, while they're training? Could be, right? But more likely, right, that things are put into game, whatever, right? Just like a bunch of us old guys before computers and all that, right? We were outside from dusk till dawn, running around, climbing trees, dropping out of trees, rolling, whipping sticks around, all kinds of crap, right? That way, it just naturally built, right? The physical attributes, the coordination, the balance, the agility, all that kind of stuff, right? And then they start putting things in your hands, teach you how to handle it, right? Basic cuts, those kind of things. But if you notice, kata start at even in the Shoda, in the Kotoryu, right? One of the scrolls, the very, very beginning is Kuraidori, right? Kuraidori is just a list of 5 kamae. Well, that's it? No, not it, okay? That's where the science starts. In the Gyokoryu, right, you start with Ki no Kata, right? There's 5 of these things, even though most people have been introduced to 3 of them, known as Ichimonji, Jimonji, and Hicho, right? First you learn the kamae, then you learn the Kihon Gata, which starts to apply or starts to reference how to enter and those kind of things, energy conservation. But either way, when we're starting with a kata, there's already this assumption. You know how to properly do the kamae. And not just, well, I saw it once. No, you're able to move around. You're able to do things before you start ducking stuff that's coming at you, right? So anyway, so there's this prelude, right? And I think this is important to look at when it comes to self-protection and survival, okay? I get it, right? Ego wants to learn the cool shit because it wants to be able to kick ass and take names. I get it, right? But from a learning perspective, all the things that we're going to need, coordination, timing, all that kind of stuff, understanding it, strategic thinking and everything, that's going to take quite a while to develop. So we have a technique or a skill that can break this guy's body down in as few moves as possible in as few seconds as possible, right? Because on a battlefield, you don't have 2-minute rounds. You don't have 5-minute rounds. Just like on the street, right? As an ex-federal cop, based on statistics, I'm telling you, the average self-defense situation is over in 2 to 10 seconds, which is well within the glycogen energy spike that happens in your muscles when you have to go into fight or flight, okay? Even active shooter situations, workplace violence kind of stuff, right? The average one is over in less than 10 minutes, okay? But if I'm on a battlefield dealing with this guy, then the next guy, then the next guy, this better not last 2 to 5 minutes, right? Last more than 2 to 10 seconds, his friend's coming up behind me and stabbing me or cutting my throat so that both of them can move on to the next, the next of my peers or friends or compatriots or whatever, right? The realm is different, right? This is why I don't have conversations with wrestler guys, okay? Or anybody that's in that realm of thinking, okay? I get it. They're good in that realm. I get it, right? But we're not talking about the same thing, right? This isn't even apples and oranges. This is apples and fucking nuclear weapons, okay? So anyway, so what I focused on with them, and again, just to cut this really, really short, you know what? Let's do this. I'll also add a link in the description of the full audio recording of last night's lesson. So that's, I don't know, hour and a half lesson. So I'll give that to you as well, right? So what I discussed was, okay, that's going to take how long to get, right? Which is also something I discussed too. The longer it takes for you to start your training or the longer it takes for you to get back into training, the length of time that it's going to take for you to master this stuff is what it is. So just think about this. Every day that you delay getting started is another day that you add onto the back end. Every month, every year, whatever, that you delay getting started or getting restarted is another day, week, month, or year added onto the back end. It's just basic math, okay? So, but anyway, what we started with was, just like with the scrolls, there's all this preemptive stuff that the kids are getting up through. And remember, when I say adult stuff, they started in their teen years. Takuma Sensei started with Mizuta Sensei at 13. Okay, Hatsumi Sensei held his first boken at 5. Okay, how far behind were most of us when we got started? Okay, unless we're the only starting is I click the start button on the YouTube video. Okay, yeah, I'm an ass sometimes. Anyway, so what are the preemptive things? Okay, well, if we're talking survival, then let's go to Takamatsu. We'll just stay with him. Okay, most people don't know that his nickname growing up in school was Crybaby. Okay, the 32nd Grandmaster, the 33rd Grandmaster, the Togakure Ryu. Okay, yeah, okay. He was bullied all the time. Okay, there are stories about him being ridden around on the schoolyard grounds at recess like a horse or a dog. Okay, he's got his hands handed to him on a regular basis. Dad was lamenting about this stuff. He tried to toughen him up, and Grandpa, right, 32nd Grandmaster, says, send him to the dojo. I'll fix that. Okay. So what was his training like for the first year? He cried for a good part of that first year because all Grandpa did was lock him and throw him around. And he had to learn ukemi. Did he want to quit? Yeah. Was he allowed to? No. His parents then were different than parents now. I don't want him to do anything he doesn't want to do. I don't want to make him unhappy. I don't want to tell him no. Well, they and you raise a pussy or somebody who's a victim. It's just the way it works, okay? This is not fashionable in the 21st century. However, we're not talking about the 21st century. So for the first year of Takuma Sensei's life, every day after school for an hour or two, he was being thrown into the dojo floor. Point of the training? To make him unbreakable. Not to learn ukemi. Most people stop with their learning of ukemi as soon as they've learned the break falls and they get their next level or belt, or the teacher goes, okay, that one's good, let's move on to this. No, the goal was to make him unbreakable, because until his skill set of beating, breaking, or deterring another human being is what it needs to be, he's probably going to get shoved. He's probably going to get hit. He's probably going to get thrown. He's probably going to get locked up. So how do we survive that? First level of training is being unbreakable. At the same time, we can work on evasion and those kind of things, because the goal of that is to be difficult to hit, kick, grab, whatever, okay? Great, but that's a close, it's a close tie, but what happens if evasion fails? I've gotten hit, I've gotten kicked, I've gotten grabbed, I'm being thrown, whatever. Everything defaults to being unbreakable, being able to do ukemi, okay? Even when we start, there's a bridge between those two where we're riding off a shot. We're moving with it. It's still landing. There's impact, but there's no damage. We got hit, but we didn't get hurt, okay? This is the prioritization up front. I think the kids growing up in samurai families, if I were going to train my kids and I was in a time of civil war and all that kind of stuff, if I'm going to start them at 4, so my grandson works on it, it's what my kids worked on, whatever, because 1, I can make games out of that stuff. I can make it fun. 2, they get used to being bumped around. It just becomes a thing, and we're not waiting until they're 13, 15, 18, 38, whatever, to start working on ukemi, okay? But there's a logic to things. So if everything fails, kata fails, strategy fails, and all that, primary strategy is evade. Don't get hit. Don't get grabbed. Okay? That should be a goal. That should be how it's translated. As long as we're not just focusing on techniques. I'm trying to learn koku. How good are you at not being hit? How good are you at not being broken? What does that have to do with it? Because if that freaking technique fails, you're getting hit and you're getting broken, or you're getting thrown down, or knocked down, or whatever, stabbed, whatever, okay? So the idea here isn't just, are we memorizing or learning things off of some scrolls, or are we learning the reason for those things on the scrolls? And are we learning the stuff that was just commonplace back in the day, right? Did you ever notice that nobody taught you how to breathe? Because it was kind of implied, right? Nobody really taught you how to walk either. Sure, I did. I remember helping me and my wife. We helped our kid learn how to, they didn't learn how to walk. It's a natural evolutionary thing. What you did was you held them up and pointed them at the other parent so that they stumbled and learned how to not fall down. They taught themselves how to walk. You created the conditions for that to happen. Okay? But why did we teach them how to walk? On a lazy side, so I as a parent don't have to lug this human being around as they get bigger, and 2, so they can get places faster. I don't have to do everything to feed them. The ultimate point is for them to become self-sufficient. Students too, okay? Anyway, let's keep moving, right? So, actually, I jumped off my notes here as I was putting this stuff up here. Let's start by taking a look at 4 attacker types, because if we're looking at manipulation, controlling them, taking away their ability to control, affecting their beliefs, their perceptions about what's real, what's not, what's possible, what's not, those kind of things, we need to understand that there are different attacker types in the world, right? And they have different preferences, they have different fight styles, and so they're looking for certain things. They affect control a certain way. They believe and feel that they have control when certain things are happening, right? We don't have time to dive into all these things, but if we start with the 4 attacker types, it's a good place, right? And then we'll take a look at 3 states right? Uh, three three levels of intent, I guess, right? Or three conditions that they could be in, regardless of what kind of attacker they are. We're going to take a look at some psychology, okay? Based on, comes right off the mandala, 1600-year-old mandala, based on a 3, 4, 5, 6,000, 5,000-year-old stream of understanding the human condition, okay? Anyway, all right, so 4 attacker types, okay? First are, we're going to call these the ones who rely on strength and position, okay? I'm going to put a little code word here, sumo, okay? That doesn't make them sumo, right? But what I'm talking about, these people tend to be larger framed, they tend to be tall, they tend to have mass where they're not able to move well. Okay, so don't confuse size, like wrestler guy, with somebody's ability to move quickly. This guy, either through just laziness or through just natural proclivity, because he can't move his body fast to walk from point A to point B, or he's just a big lumbering guy, right? So he's naturally padded, those kind of things. He's just going to grab a hold of you and jack you a good shot, right? You get hit by this guy, you're going down. Or if you don't hit this person in the right places or attack the right weak points, you're not going to win, because he owns what we would call the earth. He owns that realm, right? He's just, so this guy doesn't move very much, right? He just moves in, or he'll come up behind you, bear hug, those kind of things, grab you by your throat, grab you by your clothes, pull you in really close, that kind of thing, right? So this guy tends to hold position, right? Next guy, we're going to call him the wind-up, right? Not like a wind-up toy, right? He's like a baseball pitcher. Pitcher? I think I spelled that right. Baseball pitcher, right? So this is like, roughly speaking, it's like judo, but what we're looking at here is this person, they may throw jabs and all that kind of stuff, but they wind up, right? This big haul off thing. Sometimes it's just a shoulder thing that goes, right? Sometimes it's this big old kind of thing, but they need time and distance, right? They need space to be able to get that thing in there. They need to use certain types of distractions, certain types of setups like jabs and pushes and things like that, because they need you off balance so they can get that thing in there, right? We call this the water realm, right? Where it's like an ocean wave. There's this big haul off kind of thing, and then this ton of power comes flying in. This guy's not moving around a whole lot. This guy, right, knows he can't do this. So to get more power, does these kind of things, okay? Next guy, right, I'm going to call this guy Rocket Man. And I'm just making this shit up as I go along. Not the science, just the names, right? Rocket Man, right? This guy, he's just in and going, right? He's very direct, overwhelming, get the hell in there, right? So this guy's like somebody with a rocket launcher or a machine gun, that kind of thing, right? So I'm going to call this much more like karate, right? Where this guy's very fiery, just boom, boom, just in there, right? There's no wind up. He's going to hit you 3 times before you realize you've been hit once, okay? That guy, right? Next guy, right? We're going to call him, let's call him Dancer Dude. All right? See, just made it up on. This guy's like a cloud. He's like a fart. He's like, this is that wind realm, right? This guy's like jittery all over the place, trying to get you confused and whatnot, right? So he can come in and do that kind of thing, right? So while he's moving around and there's a lot of energy going on, he's not like an arrow, right? He's this guy, right? This guy, right? Very windy, right? Very all over the place, right? Chaotic. He's trying to get you, right? All jittery because you don't know which way he's coming and stuff like that, right? Some other class we'll talk about how to match up a fight style to match and beat these guys, because each one is an answer, a primary and secondary answer to the other ones. Okay, it's pretty cool. All right, so this one much more like Aikido. Okay, for those of you who don't speak Japanese, Aikido, right? It's Aikido, right? So, but it's just they're all over the place. We don't have time to go into all of these things. That's why we do classes on Friday and whatnot. This thing that I invite everybody to, right? Here's the URL, right? So we can take a look at these manipulation and control things. And even Friday, a 75 to 90-minute class, right? That's why people need time, right? And they need to break from classical, because they're not training for self-defense at a certain point if they're not learning how to deal with these things. Okay, if they're only ever these defenses come and are based on those attacks, and well, what's the likelihood of somebody throwing a classical tsuki at you in today's world? Okay? You get to a certain point, you can make somebody's attack like this end up looking like one when it gets to you, but he's not going to do it on purpose, mostly because he doesn't know it, right? But why the hell would he fight the way you want him to? Why would you fight him the way he thinks you should as well? Okay? So anyway, so we have these different attacker types, right? But here's the thing. Well, actually, you know what? Before I even jump into those, let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Okay, let's jump over to this. What the hell is this, right? So this is one of these graphics over on the mandala, or on the Kongokai mandala, for those of you who know what it is. If you don't, it's no big deal, okay? I'm just going to use the same framework, okay? And there's lots of ways to look at the graphics on that mandala, okay? A lot of people, just like with, if I learn the kata, I can fight. Or if I learn how to spar, I can fight. If I get a black belt, I can fight. I can, right? People like to believe that if they learn all the symbols and all the imagery on there, then they'll be enlightened, or they'll know, and they'll be in the group of elite and whatever. Now, there's lots of ways to look and translate any one of these. Okay, they're in layers, right? You ever watch Shrek, right? Ogres have layers. So do Parfait. Anyway, right? So the mandala has layers too. Okay, so what we're going to look at is the way, and again, this is very general. You would have to do a deep dive into neurology and brain science and all that kind of stuff. The cool thing is I have a student here who is a doctor, professor at a university, and she is a brain scientist. So when I teach this stuff, I look at her and I go, I know it's not the scientific names, but is this, right? See, I surround myself with people that will call me on shit because they know, right? My job is to translate between rocket science or brain science or whatever, and the stuff that we need to be able to get there as quickly as possible, okay? So what we're going to look at is how the brain processes input from outside, comes up with an answer, and puts your body back into motion, or it puts your body in motion based on that thing. Now, in this session, we're not talking about how we do it. We're talking about how he does it. Because if I understand it, I can get ahead of it, or I can manipulate it at its core, okay? So it doesn't matter what these things are called or whatever, but, okay, this realm right here, right, is, I'm just going to write SI. SI is sensory input. Doesn't matter if it comes through the eyes, the sense of touch, taste, hearing, whatever. Sensory input. Something touches one of my sense receptors from the outside world, and it's just raw data, okay? Just sent an email today that had a reference to a program that I did, which is actually a recording of a 3-hour class I did with my Inner Circle guys on 5 levels of using sight and sight consciousness, insight, those kind of things, to be able to survive, right? Bushi no Me is what it's called. Anyway, so it comes in and it's just raw input, it's just raw data. In that program, that's called nekugan. Just means raw eye, or raw eye, naked eye, okay? Your brain's not doing anything with it yet. It just comes in and hits the sense receptor, okay? Then that's passed on to an area where, right, it's perception. It's being perceived. It's being processed, right? Call it judgment, call it perception, whatever. Is this good? Is it bad? Is it whatever, okay? This is a very primitive kind of thing, and it operates based on three conditions. It's pleasant, it's painful, meh, well, right? So from here, right, I'm going up to this next thing here, which is conceptualization. Okay, conceptualization is I'm coming up with an answer, right? I need to problem solve. It's a punch, it's a grab, there's pressure coming from a certain direction, whatever. Okay, so I need an answer. Okay, so here's the thing: when it gets here, there's actually a feedback loop that goes on between these two, right? This, I'm just writing storehouse, right? It's the subconscious storehouse. Right? So all your experiences, knowledge, and all that kind of stuff is stored, right? Okay. In Sanskrit, it's called the alaya vijnana. Okay, alaya vijnana. Vijnana means storehouse. Okay, alaya means snow. Okay, the alaya is storehouse. So it's the alaya vijnana. Vijnana is a process. Okay, alaya is snow. Alaya is the tail end of the word Himalayas. We say Himalaya, it's Himalaya, okay? The Himalaya, storehouse of snow, okay? But either way, right, this is where everything is put, okay? So as soon as this hits here, this jumps up here and sees if there's anything in here that tells us, been there, done that, here's how to handle it. If there is, this happens very quickly because it knows exactly what to do. So when this feeds back, right, it has the answer, right? Here's the answer. Go, right? So now we're back through all this stuff. Now this is, right? This condition is your body goes into action, okay? If this doesn't have anything in it, processing is slower because there has to be a back and forth here for this one to find things in here that it can put together. Because if there's not a ready-made thing, then what we have is a shit ton of Legos, and we need to build the thing before we can do the thing. Which is why kata training is more important than people who don't like kata think it is. Because past masters pass down a bunch of pre-made things. Does that mean you're going to use them exactly as is? No. You're going to put them in so that this function doesn't have to work as hard to come up with an answer on the fly when you're getting your ass killed. Okay? Doesn't mean you're going to fight with the kata. It means you're putting as many elements in there as possible to make this process in your brain work as easily, quickly, and as effectively and efficiently as possible to get that shit back out so the body can do its work. Okay? So it's not about using kata. It's about already having pre-made answers preloaded. Okay? So there's this process, right? Comes in from the outside, perception, conceptualization, what do I do? Oh, we've already done that, so we just go back out. As a matter of fact, it doesn't jump up here very far at all. It's conceptualization, it's muscle memory, it's all that kind of stuff, right? Because we're getting into subconscious, the subconscious and whatnot, right? Okay. If it doesn't know, it has to dig around. It's like you not being able to find your damn keys, so you have to dig around your house before you can even leave to go to work. Okay, it's no different, right? And then once we have the answer, feeds back out, body goes into motion. Okay. Now this is happening all the way through the fight, all that kind of stuff, right? But this is primitive psychology that modern psychology just has better or more clear words on because of EKGs, not EKGs, but brain scans and all this kind of scientific stuff. I put a question mark in here because there's this is kind of the void realm. This is where potential lies, right? So here's the thing. Here's the point, right? The more he has here and the more he's done, so he's preloaded here, the harder it will be to control and manipulate him. Because you're going to need to understand what his world is like, what his preferences are, fight style, that kind of stuff. Because if you don't know what his strengths and weaknesses are, you're going to be fucking guessing. Okay? But he's processing the world this way, right? So here's what we're looking at. Remember, this is all of our brains, but what I give him here determines what comes back out, because it determines what he's going to be experiencing and the problem he perceives that needs to be solved. Okay? I know. This is why most people don't do this kind of stuff, because it's too damn hard. They don't want to have to think. Just tell me where to put my damn foot, sensei. Okay? Put it there. Well, now the technique didn't work. You told me to put my foot there. Yeah, no, that was off of that attack from that particular Ugei you were working with. Now you need a different timing, distancing, and angling, because his reach is different, his size is different, the speed is different, the angle of the attack is different. Okay. Meanwhile, back at just tell me what answer to put on the paper so I can get the grade and not have to learn how to think. And I can still get this. Oh, sensei, that would be amazing. Yeah, I know. Right? Which is why there are a whole bunch of freaking McDojos out there doing that shit. Anyway, because these dojos wouldn't exist if they couldn't stock the floor with people that want that thing. Why do these dojos lose dozens and dozens of students within the first 100 days? Because they're not being taught things that matter. Because they can't make the connection. The smart ones can't make the connection between what's being taught and what they know goes on out in the world. So we have a choice. We put blinders on, or we ask so the teacher can tell us, okay, we're doing a model. We're going to be broadening and moving to that, but I have to give you a base. Okay, I'll give you a couple more classes. Okay, but it has to make sense. Okay, but if what we're aiming for is what we're going to get. If you want a belt, you can find somebody to give you a belt. I had a student once that I kicked out of the freaking training, right? He went fishing around for other Shidoshi and dai-shihan until he found one that would sign off on him so he could get high-ranking stuff out of Japan. Okay? Do I feel bad about that? I feel bad about him, right? But human beings will do them. We will always find what it is that we're seeking. If we're not happy when we found it, then that's an indication that we were either misinformed, misguided, or we were delusional because we thought that was going to bring us happiness. It is what it is, right? Okay. All right. So let's keep moving. Okay. So let's jump back down here. I talked about those 3 states. Okay. So there's 3 states that an attacker could be in based on what you're doing. Okay. I don't care which attacker type. Okay. They could be all out aggressive. All out aggressive. Okay. It doesn't matter what you're doing. They're coming in like a firestorm. Doesn't matter. Okay. They want you bad enough. They're going to disregard everything. No matter how solid your stuff is, no matter how scary your stuff is, no matter how much you could beat him into the ground, either out of ignorance or out of him knowing something you don't know, or him not caring. He's not gone back to jail. There's a whole bunch of reasons that this guy will do what he's doing, right? And it doesn't matter. He's just going to keep on coming, okay? Second one, and again, these are in no particular order. Second one is cautionary, okay? Cautionary, right? That means that whatever you're doing is putting him on alert, either because you're scary, and that looks, maybe I'm at the wrong victim. Maybe I should have picked the other guy that was walking by and not this one, okay? Or he's never seen that before. He's never come in on that before. Shit, I got to figure this out. Boy, better hurry up because I'm not waiting here all day, okay? So he's cautionary, right? He's got to figure it out, right? And the third one is oblivious, right? I kind of blended him in with the other one, but this one, I've talked about this in other lessons where we talk about when you take up kamae and your kamae is solid, it's right. Your strategy, your intent, all that kind of stuff is on the mark, right? And this guy just throws shit that you know couldn't hit you anyway or couldn't hurt you anyway, right? Being in that position and being, see, one of the feelings in Ichimonji no kamae from the Gyoko school, right, is I am so confident in my kamae that I can win with this alone. Okay? And if we remember that Ichimonji is part of the Sanden Kamae, Ichimonji, Jumonji, Hicho, then that's the feeling in those 3 kamae. It's actually the feeling in all of my kamae. Okay? The feeling in my kamae is this is a trusted friend. I am so confident in my ability to use this kamae. Not a kata, not a skill. This is the skill. So confident in my kamae that I can win with just this, which is why we go from Ichimonji no kamae to Ichimonji no kata. Here's how to effectively use Ichimonji no kamae to kick his ass. Ichimonji no kata is an example for how to do that with this position. Okay? So this is a way of gauging whether this guy just has a freaking clue. Okay? In the scheme of things, this guy doesn't care, or he knows something you don't know. You should be cautionary. This guy's paying attention, doesn't know enough about getting in on you because he's never fought somebody who's doing that thing, which is why we don't break from the Sengoku Jidai stuff so we can fight more like today's stuff because, like that stuff doesn't work anymore. This is the way people fight. Yeah, which is the biggest reason why I shouldn't be fucking fighting like that, because he's seen, how much of that has he seen? Okay? So if he's here, then I need to be this. I should never be this. Okay? And if my kamae is right, and I know this, well, then I don't have to worry about this guy as much because he's not a tactical strategic fighter. He's just throwing shit. Okay? So, but this guy is actually the hardest to manipulate because he's not fucking paying attention. I'm going to have to bleep out a whole bunch of stuff. He's not paying attention. You can't manipulate somebody from a distance. You have to put hands on to manipulate them the way most people think. Because if he's not paying attention and he's not processing things, he's got a low IQ. If he already got hit in the head and he's half dizzy and just trying to hit whatever's moving in front of him, that's really difficult. He's really difficult to manipulate. Not the smart guy, not the aggressive guy, the cautionary guy. So they go in reverse order. This guy's the hardest to manipulate because he's not freaking paying attention. This guy's harder because he's already on alert. This guy, he's not. He's either not thinking clearly enough, or if I understand his fight style, then I know how he's thinking, and so it gives me an edge up. Okay? Anyway, all right. So everything is going to keep going back to this because we need to be understanding sensory input. Okay? And again, I'm going to work with eyes today very, very quickly because we're running out of time here. Very quickly. But this also works for when he's grabbing a hold of you. So what he feels, tension, strength, pressure, direction, right? Ease, resistance, whatever, okay? Same thing with eyes, right? Direction, angle, right? That kind of stuff, right? Did I already screw up his eyes and he's tearing through, or he's got Mitsubishi in his eyes and whatever, okay? So, but every sense, just like I'm having a psychological fight with somebody known as an argument, what he hears and how he processes that, right? See, this isn't fight responses, this is comebacks. Okay? How are you doing today? I'm not unwell, thank you. Wait, what? I'm not unwell. Does that mean you're good or you're not good? Okay. What's up? I'm relatively neato. Okay. Verbal Mitsubishi. Okay. All right. Anyway, okay. If you can get somebody to look sideways, did I ever hear that before? Or up because he's trying to access visual memory, that's where you can pop him. Because he's not looking at you. He's looking to the inside. He's accessing memory. His eyes are pointing at you, but he's not looking at you. Okay. You can blind somebody by saying the right thing to get him to go into thought processes. Right? Because he's got to figure it out. He's got to think about it. In that case, bang. All right? All right. So never, ever, 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 ever forget. Right? Remember I said this guy's, the more he has here, that means the more he has here. Okay? Based on what you're doing, the more he has, the harder it is to manipulate. And never, ever, ever forget that experience trumps skills. Somebody could know 500 techniques. I only need to know one, and I know when to apply it and where and how to use it against that guy. And I've done it a bunch of times, which is what makes me laugh when people will look at one of my videos and they see me doing a mushadori and they go, that shit don't work in a fight. The number of mushadori I've whipped on trained killers as a military cop who were bigger, stronger, whatever, I'm not having an argument with them. Okay? So anyway, all right, so let's take a look at 3 ways to control their sensory input. Okay? 3 ways to control their sensory input. 1, again, I'm going to focus on eyes predominantly. Okay? So 1 is with your posture. Right? Your kamae. Right? Remember that your kamae aren't just things. Your kamae close certain targets and access and angles, and they open. Right? Certain windows are closed, certain windows are open. If you understand that, and you understand what kind of fighter he is and what he needs to come in, okay? If I'm cautionary, or, well, we'll talk about the manipulation here in a minute, right? If I'm trying to manipulate a certain way, and that depends. Do I want him to come in? Do I want him to stay back? Do I want him, right? Okay. I'm going to choose the kamae. And what we teach beginners, we just teach them kamae because they're just getting a straight punch. It's coming in, or a hook punch or whatever. They're not doing strategic thinking. They're learning how to use the tools, not having them fix the engine. I just need them to understand how the tools work. Okay. But at a certain point, this is where people tend to quit because they think they know it all because they've learned all of those lessons. Instead of looking at the lessons from a different angle, how do I match kamae to certain fighter types so I can either invite him, repel him, confuse him, right? Or manipulate him to convince him that certain things are available to him, but it's just an open trap. Okay? One of my teachers used to always say, take up the right kamae against the right fighter and you understand how to use it. Okay? It's like that old story. Come into my parlor, said the spider to the fly. Have a seat. Would you like something to eat? I know I do. Okay? So, 3 ways to control sensory input, right? So 1 is posture. 1 is based on your movement. Okay? And I don't mean like direction and all that. It can, okay? But, well, you know, we'll do this, right? Posture, kamae, right, is what he has to get through. If you understand your kamae, you understand that, again, it closes certain things off or whatever. So the question he has to answer for himself is, how do I get through this thing, right? So what I'm presenting is a problem, right? What do I have to get through, right? With movement, what he has to worry about. So if we stay within the realm of ninjutsu, budo taijutsu, whatever you want to call it, and he's never experienced it, cautionary, or he has to throw his style to the wind and just come flying in, which means he just threw away his protection, okay? Because he needs to get you more than he needs to not get his ass kicked, okay? So movement is, what does he have to worry about, okay? And this is where Kyojutsu Tenkan comes in, right? It comes into all of these things. Kyojutsu Tenkan, disguising truth and falsehood, juxtapositioning truth and falsehood. So people like to pick and choose martial arts. I don't train in all martial arts. I've trained in a lot before I got to this one. But what I do is get really good at taking up their stances and get really good at moving like this guy, right? How do they move their legs, right, to threaten you with a kick? How do they, right? How's their body move as opposed to this guy who's going to kick you, right? So what's a Thai boxer look like? What's a Western boxer look like? Like, you know, boxing match kind of thing. What does Taekwondo, American Taekwondo, kickboxer, right? What do they look like? Because remember, the more experience he has, okay, now what I have to do is look like and move like something different than I am, because what he perceives me to be will determine how he acts. So if I'm going to do what I look like, then he's going to deal with me based on what I look like. But if I take up a stance from a different style and I move like that style, and he's experienced that style, he's going to come at me the way he knows to come at that style. And when he does, I'm going to flip it, because all I need is for him to come. And when he does that, then I'm going to do us. Okay? Because he will be wrong. Manipulation is to their perception, their beliefs. Most people think of control from the perspective of force. I'm going to make him do things. I don't have to make him do anything. Well, Sensei, you're calling it manipulation. I am, because that's what everybody thinks of. Okay? A ninja doesn't make him do things. A ninja paints a picture and creates the appearance of a reality that makes him do what he will already do because of that thing. Just like anybody with an addiction, right? Dude, stop arguing with it. I can't help myself. Well, then it's not them. It's your lack of self-control and ability to supersede this need to open your frickin' mouth every time somebody uses that word, that posture, that action. Okay? You want to control people, learn to give rope. They will hang themselves because they can't help themselves. It's what they do when certain things occur, which is why we have to ferret out our habit patterns to make sure that we're not always doing the same shit the same way based on the same input. Okay? So posture, movement. The last one is intention. Okay? Let me ask you a question. You ever walked into a room? Maybe you're married, maybe you had a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, parents, whatever. You walked into the room and like the room just seemed darker. The air was kind of thick, right? And they're there and they've got a smile on their face, but you're like, what's wrong? Nothing. I'm late for something. I'll be back. You can feel it. People can say, there's nothing wrong. Bullshit. Okay? So we can feel it. There's certain micro muscle combinations, facial micro expression, body language. There's an energy that's going on, right? That can be felt and can be processed. Okay? This is what's farther down the line. Because if I can get this guy to feel a certain type of energy, I can get him to move before he was ready to move. Because his attacks and his attack style, it's not just how he moves his arms and whether he kicks or whether he punches. There's a certain timing to that. He needs a certain distance, right? There's a certain angles that things will be coming in on and all that. He needs those things. He doesn't think about those things, but he needs them. If I know what they are, okay, no, the sound didn't drop, okay? I can mess with timing, distancing, angling, those kind of things. This is a timing as to when he'll go and cause him to initiate before, okay? So we're going to be playing with that on Friday. That'll be fun, okay? All right, so let's jump right to the end of this thing. Again, if you want to see some examples of this thing, less than $5, $4.99 US, right? You can jump in. You'll get the recording even if you can't make it. You get the recording even if you do make it, right? What you don't get if you can't make it is the ability to ask questions in real time to get those answered right there, okay? But either way, it's the cheapest you're going to work with me. And I don't want to hear anything about money because I give a ton of shit away for free. So anyway, so very, very quickly, just to round this out, 3 ways to manipulate, okay? So one, again, they're really based on all the stuff we've been talking about. One is I do things to let him in, okay? So what that means is I take up a posture that has windows that are open in the direction that he needs them to be open, okay? It also means that I let him do what he needs and wants to do, right? So I can do this to one attacker type. I can do both of those with one kamae. If I take up a low hoko this way, right? Not like this, because this to a lot of fighters will look like I'm a Thai boxer. This looks weird, right? But not so weird. But if I bring it in a little bit more, right? It's a low hoko, adjusted doko kind of thing, right? Not only am I letting him in, right? But I'm also, where the hell's my notes, right? But I'm giving him a way to believe, right? This is for dealing with incoming strikes and grabs and things like that, right? So hit him, grab him, lock him up, and things like that, right? But what does this look like to the average modern fighter? It looks like I'm a wrestler. If I hunch a little bit more, if I change things a little bit more, I end up looking like a shoot fighter. Except that when this guy comes in, I'm shifting off and lifting a knee into his face because he's going to come in under those arms to do what he does. Don't try to get somebody to do something they don't normally do. Give them a reason to be themselves. Okay? The oppositional personality guy that's always going to argue with you, no matter what you say, he's going to pick the opposite. Start off that conversation with, you're probably not going to like this, but, and then say what you want him to do. He's not going to contradict that. He's going to contradict the first thing you said, which is what? You're not going to like this. 9 out of 10 times, this has been my experience in the world, 9 out of 10 times, the oppositional personality type will like, whether he likes it or not, he will agree with what I want him to do because he just told me I was wrong, that he wouldn't like it. Stop leading with the thing you want him to do and lead with the thing that he does because he can't help himself. It's not what he does, it's who he is. He's argumentative. Give him the wrong thing to argue against. Okay? I'd say this isn't rocket and brain science, but it is. But if you try to learn this by studying rocket and brain science, it's just going to sound too freaking complicated. Okay? Anyway, second thing we can do to control them, right, is to create barriers. Create barriers and problems. Okay? Which is what kamae do to begin with. So this is the opposite. Instead of letting him in, right, he carries himself a certain way, he needs certain angles and whatnot. So I'm going to take up the kamae, right, that closes off the things that he needs. Okay? One works with the guy who's aggressive anyway, and he's going to come no matter what. So I'm going to give him the thing he wants, but he's going to get what he wanted, just not the way he wanted it. Okay? What we teach students from the very beginning is to close things off so this guy becomes more cautionary. It's going to hurt him if he comes in, those kind of things. I mean, it's going to hurt him either way, but you're creating barriers and problems. He has to figure it out, which is why people need to stop freaking adapting this stuff so it looks like modern fighters. I know it's not 15th, 13th, whatever century Japan. I know, okay? Which is why it's going to work. Okay? You just need to understand how to apply it to these guys and not a classical puncher. All right? So, and the third thing is to use pain, distraction. I'm sorry, where am I? Yeah, use pain, distraction, dissuasion. Okay? Pain, distraction, dissuasion, those kind of things. We talked about that one last week as well, right? So I'm getting him to pay attention to the wrong things, okay? But this ultimately all comes down to Kyojutsu Tenkai, okay? Which runs through everything that we do. I don't care if you're a beginner, intermediate, advanced, super advanced, guru, mastermind, rocket scientist, whatever, okay? From the very first kamae, from the very first kata. It's all based on Kyojutsu Tenkai. Juxtapositioning truth and falsehood. It's never what it looks like. If it is, then he can solve the problem very quickly. He can get through the barrier. He just sorts it out. Okay? Anyway, all right. So again, we're going to, on Friday, as usual, we're going to be doing some physical examples, self-defense techniques based on some of this stuff. We can only fit so much in, but we're going to be working on those things. Okay. So there's an option for you, right? There's the link. It's already right there. Okay. If you've always wanted to get started in ninjutsu, maybe you haven't started yet, right? Then check out my Foundations of Ninjutsu Self-Defense program, right? I'll put a link in the description for you, right? And if you've been around for a while and you want to take this stuff to the next level, then I'll also put a link in the description for my Ninpo Masterclass program. In all of these, well, there's recordings, but Ninpo Masterclass, what you're getting are 2 live classes a week. In the other program, you're getting recorded lessons, skills, techniques, personal development stuff, a lot of stuff that nobody is teaching. And you're also getting a weekly live class from the dojo where you can ask questions, all that kind of stuff, right? But I'll put those links down there. So if you're watching it live right now, they're not there yet, right? But as soon as I get this thing done within the next day or so, those links will be, the description will be changed out, and those things will be available so you can jump in, okay? That's what I have. We ran way over this time. I apologize for those of you who stole time from work or whatever you're doing. You can get back to your lives, citizens. But either way, right, whether you train with me or not, hopefully this gave you some ideas and some aha moments for really jacking things up and being the ninja people set out to be, and not just being tricky for the sake of being tricky. Okay, this is all about having more control over ourselves, our lives, our experiences, and anybody that tries to bring stupidity into our lives to screw with any one of those things. Okay, that's it. I'll talk to you next time. Be safe. Train.